Chapter 1. I perished once. Not just in the physical sense, my heart perished long before my body ever did. 7 years of chasing Calvin, 3 years of marriage, 10 years of my life were devoted to him, and in the end it was all for nothing. Every ounce of love I gave him was wasted. People always said Calvin and I were the perfect couple, made for each other. For a long time I believed that lie too. He was kind enough, I suppose, always polite, always considerate. He never refused me, but he also never really saw me. He'd respond to my needs but never reached out first. He was flawless in the way he went about things, but that perfection was cold and distant like a well-made machine. I thought that was just who he was. A man who kept his emotions neatly packed away. Then Anna came back. His first love, the one he'd never quite gotten over. She was everything I wasn't. Bold, dazzling, a force of nature. While I was calm and quiet, she swept through life like a storm, leaving everyone breathless in her wake. It wasn't until she returned that I realized Calvin wasn't emotionless after all. He could be warm. He could be passionate. He could be alive. Just not with me. The day I found out I was pregnant, I went looking for him, excited to share the news. But I found him by the river with Anna, watching the sunset like something out of a romantic movie. Later, when I was lying in a hospital bed, pleading with him to stay, he barely hesitated before walking out the door. Anna had called, and that was all that mattered. And in my final moments, as I stared at my phone, waiting for a call that would never come, I finally gave up. I tossed the phone into the water, watching it sink beneath the surface, just like everything else I had ever hoped for. The tears had dried up long ago. I didn't have any left to cry. Years of disappointment, of heartbreak, had woven themselves into a net around me, trapping me in a life I no longer recognized. I had spent this life, my laughter, my tears, my everything, on a man who had never, not even for a moment, truly loved me. I remember asking him once, "Did you ever, even for just a second, love me?" His silence spoke louder than any answer. 10 years. 10 years of deluding myself, thinking we were something we weren't. I had been living in my own fantasy, playing a role in a story no one else was reading. And then my heart stopped, and with it, the love I had for him. Chapter 2. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the hospital, sitting in the examination room. In my hands were 2 pieces of paper, a pregnancy test and a cancer diagnosis. Life, it seemed, had decided to play one final joke on me. 1 month after discovering I was pregnant, I had been diagnosed with cancer. "Selena, thank God you're awake." I felt warm arms envelop me, followed by the sensation of tears soaking into my shoulder. "Big sister." I blinked, staring up at the familiar face, my sister's tear-streaked cheeks and puffy eyes filled with relief. I glanced down at the diagnosis in my hand, my mind struggling to process it all. Somehow, I had been given a second chance. I was back 3 months before everything fell apart. My sister stroked my hair, her tears spilling over as she tried to come to terms with the fact that her younger sister had so little time left. I held her close, and for the first time in a long time I let myself cry. But I wasn't crying out of fear. It wasn't the end I was afraid of. I was crying out of gratitude, because for the first time I had a chance to live for myself. Even if I only had 3 months left, it was still a gift. A chance to rewrite my story. When I got home, the house was as cold and empty as ever. Calvin wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. If I remembered correctly, he was probably with Anna, flying kites by the river. It was almost funny, this man who had never once shown me a smile, out there doing something as carefree and childish as flying a kite. I guess that's what real love does to a person. Just made me feel more like a fool. Chapter 3. I picked up my phone and dialed his number. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. On the 3rd try, he finally picked up. "Selena? I'm in a meeting. We can talk later." Calvin's voice was as cold and detached as ever, as if he didn't even care why I was calling. I used to fall for that. I used to believe he was just busy. But now I knew better. This wasn't the first lie he told me, and it certainly wasn't going to be the last. Every time he said he was in a meeting, he was with her, Anna. My fingers tightened around the phone, but I kept my voice steady. "I need you to come home. Now, there's something important we need to discuss." There was a moment of silence. "Stop being dramatic. I'll come home when I'm done with work." And don't bother waiting for me for dinner. Click. The line went silent. But just before the call ended, I thought I heard something. A woman's voice laughing on the other end. Calvin, where should we go after this? I stared at the phone in my hand, and to my own surprise, I started laughing. How many times had I convinced myself that he was just busy, that he was stressed, that he had his reasons? I spent years making excuses for him, believing he couldn't help it. But now it was almost funny how blind I'd been. I walked over to the closet, pulled out our marriage certificate, and set it on the table. Then I went into the bedroom and started packing. Gone was the white cotton blouse I always wore, the one that made me look like the perfect, obedient wife. Instead, I pulled out a sleek black dress, one I hadn't worn in years. I did my makeup bold, fierce. Before I got married, I was wild and passionate. I loved rock music, festivals, and dressing up in ways that turned heads. I used to live for the thrill, for the freedom of being myself. But after I married Calvin, all of that changed. I buried my real self under layers of plain clothes and quiet smiles, trying to fit into the role of the perfect, quiet wife. I gave up my career, my hobbies, everything I loved just to make him happy. But not today. Today I was done pretending. Done playing the part of the perfect wife in this miserable little game. Today I was reclaiming my freedom. Chapter 4. I didn't have much to pack, just a few clothes and personal things. It all fit into one suitcase. I printed out 2 copies of the divorce papers and left them on the coffee table, ready for him to sign. And then I heard the front door open. Calvin walked in, his eyes immediately narrowing when he saw me. "What are you wearing?" His voice was sharp, irritated. "I told you I was busy. Stop this nonsense and go change. You don't look anything like a wife should." I couldn't help but laugh. He still thought this was a tantrum and that I was just trying to get his attention. I took a step closer to him, deliberately slow, my heels clicking on the floor. He frowned, taking a step back. "Selena, what are you doing?" That's when I smelled it, another woman's perfume. And there on his collar was the faint smudge of pink lipstick. I laughed again, louder this time, unable to control it. Calvin stared at me like I'd lost my mind, his voice dripping with annoyance. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I looked at him, the man I had loved for so many years. And finally I saw it for what it was. The disgust, the impatience, the way he was always just tolerating me. It had always been there, hadn't it? It was so obvious, and yet I had been too blind to see it. I had wasted so much of myself on him, on this. I laughed until there was nothing left to laugh about, and then the absurdity of it all stopped being funny. And then, in the calmest voice I'd ever used, I said, "Calvin." He looked at me, still frowning. "Let's get a divorce." Chapter 5. There was a moment of silence. "What did you just say?" Calvin's eyes narrowed, disbelief flickering across his face. It was clear he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that I, the woman who had always bent over backwards for him, was suddenly standing up for myself. His expression hardened. "You were the one who begged me to marry you, and now you want a divorce? What the hell are you playing at?" I didn't even bother responding to his anger. Instead, I smiled, a calm, knowing smile. "You're right. I did chase after you back then. So I guess I have no one to blame but myself. But now, I've had enough. It's time for me to let go. And besides, it'll free up space for Anna, won't it?" That hit a nerve. I could see the flash of panic in his eyes, the way he suddenly couldn't look me in the face. "There's nothing going on between us," he stammered, his voice lacking the usual confidence. "Anna and I were just colleagues. It's strictly business." Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Calvin didn't even move. I walked over and opened the door myself. And there she was, Anna. For a split second, surprise flickered across her face when she saw me, but she quickly recovered, flashing that perfect, polished smile. Warm, charming, and just a little bit too practiced. "Hi," she said brightly. "I'm Calvin's colleague. He left something at my place." She held up one of Calvin's favorite lapel pins, the one he wore almost every day. I glanced at her and I could see it, the subtle challenge in her eyes, the unspoken competition she was daring me to engage in. But I wasn't going to play her game. Instead, I smiled back, calm and collected, and grabbed my suitcase. "I'm leaving. He's inside. You two can talk." Anna seemed taken aback for a second, but she said nothing. I stepped into the elevator, watching as she walked inside our apartment. Calvin didn't come after me. He didn't even look. And just like that, whatever small hope I had left disappeared completely. I pulled out my phone and typed a quick message. "Once you sign the divorce papers, let me know. I'll meet you at the court." No reply, of course. It was a beautiful day outside. The sun shining just like it had 3 years ago when I first moved into this place, full of excitement and hope. Now I was walking out with nothing but my pride intact. I tugged my suitcase behind me, trying to shake off the weight of everything that had happened. For a brief moment, I even skipped a little, trying to recapture the carefree spirit I used to have. But then out of nowhere, a sharp pain ripped through me. I doubled over, collapsing to the ground. Blood. I could feel it running down my leg. A stranger rushed to help, and the next thing I knew, I was being taken to the hospital. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic, the sterile scent of cleanliness masking the reality of pain. This time, Calvin actually showed up. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair a mess. For once, he didn't look perfectly put together. I guess he had rushed over after getting the call. He sat down next to my hospital bed, his face a mixture of frustration and confusion. But the first thing he said wasn't an apology or even concern. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice was sharp, accusatory, as if I had somehow wronged him. I stared up at the ceiling, feeling nothing but exhaustion. And then, almost without realizing it, I started laughing. It was a bitter, hollow sound, but it felt like the only appropriate response. I laughed so hard that it sent another wave of pain through my abdomen. Calvin looked at me like I'd lost my mind. When I finally stopped, I turned to him, my voice cold. "Tell you? Tell you what? The last time I tried to call you, you were in a meeting or too busy with your date. I wouldn't dare disturb you." He blinked, taken aback. But not because he thought he'd done anything wrong. No, he was just shocked that I'd actually spoken back to him like that. The woman who had always been so quiet and obedient was suddenly standing up for herself, and that made him angry. His face twisted in frustration, and he stood up, clearly ready to storm out. But then he hesitated, noticing the nurses and doctors nearby, aware of how it would look if he left his wife, who had just miscarried, alone in the hospital. So with a sigh, he sat back down, trying to regain his composure. "Can we stop this? You're being ridiculous, Selena. I've told you already, nothing happened between me and Anna. You're overreacting. When we get home, I'll explain. We can fix this." Chapter 6. Ridiculous? I didn't even bother looking at him. His excuses, his tired, predictable excuses, were no longer worth my time. If it hadn't been for the hospital calling him my legal spouse, I wouldn't have told him anything at all. The old me might have felt hurt by his accusations. I probably would have cried, felt guilty, and tried to fix things as if his mistakes were somehow mine to solve. But right now, I didn't have the energy. I was drained emotionally, physically, completely. I closed my eyes, letting the silence speak for me. Calvin noticed the difference. He hesitated, and then awkwardly reached for my hand. It was the first time in years he'd made a move like this. His touch was stiff, hollow. "Selena, don't worry. We'll have another baby. Everything will be fine." I wanted to laugh. Here he was, worrying about the baby, about the future, about everything except me. Always except me. I felt the warmth of his hand, but it only made the coldness in my chest grow. I opened my mouth to say something, but then his phone rang. He glanced at me and then at the screen. He didn't hesitate long. Of course he didn't. He stepped out of the room, his voice muffled through the door. "I'm at the hospital." "What? Where are you?" "Don't worry, I'll be right there." "Yes, I'm coming." When he came back, his face was full of fake apology. "Selena, I'm sorry. Something urgent came up at work. I've arranged for a nurse to stay with you. She'll take care of everything." And just like that, the last bit of sadness I felt for him turned into something else, numbness. This wasn't the first time he'd done this, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. I was so used to him walking away from me by now that it didn't even hurt anymore. I didn't matter to him. I never had. So why did he keep pretending? Why keep up this ridiculous act? Didn't he find it exhausting? I stared at him, at the way he tried to look concerned, and suddenly I felt sick. I leaned over the side of the bed and threw up. But I hadn't eaten anything. What came out was blood. The room spun around me, and I reached out for something to steady myself, but my hand slipped and I fell out of the bed. Maybe it was the sight of the blood, or maybe it was seeing me collapse, but Calvin froze. His face went pale, and for the first time in years, I saw something close to fear in his eyes. He shouted for the doctors and nurses, rushing to hold me up. "Selena! Selena, can you hear me? Stay with me, please." His voice was frantic, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I felt a bitter laugh escape my lips, even as my vision blurred. Calvin, meeting you was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Chapter 7. I was under for hours. When I woke up, my sister was there. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes swollen from crying so much. She'd been waiting for me, terrified. I reached out, my hand shaky, and touched her arm. She quickly wiped her eyes, her expression softening as she leaned in to hug me. I held her tight, feeling the warmth and love I'd been missing for so long. "Sis," I whispered, my voice hoarse and weak. "I should have listened to you. You were right. I never should have married someone who didn't love me." She started crying again, her sobs soft but unrelenting. We'd lost our parents years ago, and it had always been the two of us looking out for each other. She had been my rock, and I'd ignored her warnings. I'd thrown myself into a marriage that was doomed from the start. How foolish I'd been. I wiped away her tears, my heart aching for all the pain I'd caused her. "Let's live together after the divorce, okay? You won't mind taking care of me, will you?" She swatted at me playfully, her voice cracking but lighter. "Don't be ridiculous. Of course I won't mind." I smiled at her, brushing away the last of her tears. It was true, when everything falls apart, the only people you can truly rely on are the ones who love you unconditionally. A few hours later, Calvin showed up. He walked in with a bouquet of flowers and a basket of health supplements, completely oblivious to what had really happened. He thought I just had complications from the miscarriage. But when the doctor explained the full extent of my condition, his face went pale. He stood there, frozen, unable to speak. My sister didn't acknowledge him. I didn't either. But he didn't leave. Instead, he stayed, awkwardly peeling an apple, fumbling as he tried to make himself useful. "I'm sorry, Selena," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been such an idiot. Please forgive me." He handed me the apple, but it was a mess, uneven, the peel jagged and broken. And then I smelled it, the faint trace of perfume still clinging to him. I didn't take the apple. I couldn't. The sight of him alone made me feel sick all over again. I turned my back to him, my voice cold and calm. "Calvin, the only thing I want from you is your signature on the divorce papers. After that, don't come near me again. Selena, please. I'm done listening to your lies. Just leave." There was a long silence. And then I heard him stand up, his footsteps slow and heavy as he walked toward the door. Before he left, he said one last thing. "I won't divorce you. No matter what, you'll always be my wife." I let out a small, humorless laugh as the door closed behind him. Outside, it had started to rain. I thought to myself, it's time to start living again. I'll listen to music, take up painting, and travel with my sister. I'll do everything I've always wanted to do. As for the marriage, whether he signs the papers or not, it doesn't matter anymore. Nothing about Calvin matters anymore. Chapter 8. After pushing the doctors to discharge me, they finally agreed once they saw I was doing a little better. I guess they couldn't argue with me forever. I walked home with my sister, her arm linked to mine, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt at peace. We talked about our childhood and the happy memories we shared, laughing about the silly things we used to do. It was the first time in 10 years that I'd felt this light. No more worrying about walking on eggshells. No more fear of a cold glance or a ringing phone that would always pull him away. I used to be a bright, shining person. People used to call me their sunshine. But that was before Calvin, before I gave up everything to marry him. I turned down a chance to study abroad and gave up my career, and slowly, the light in me began to dim. After I settled into the role of his wife, I became someone else entirely, someone he never stopped criticizing. He said my cooking wasn't good enough, so I spent hours learning to be better in the kitchen. He said I wasn't gentle enough, so I swallowed my opinions and always agreed with whatever he said. I had lost myself. But now I was finding my way back. I started playing piano again, the very thing I had loved most before I gave it all up for him. I had once dreamed of becoming a pianist and even received an offer to study music overseas. My sister found a small music school nearby that let me use a practice room after hours. It wasn't much, but it was enough. One evening as I was playing, I noticed a man standing by the door, quietly listening. "You play beautifully," he said when I finished. "What's the name of that piece?" "Amazing Grace," I replied, a little surprised by the compliment. He smiled. "You're really good." From then on, he showed up every time I practiced. It became a routine, a small comfort in my days. He was my first real audience in years. His name was Chris. We started talking more and more, mostly about music. We'd discuss everything from Chopin to Beethoven, and sometimes he'd bring his violin and play along with me. We made music together, and somewhere along the way we grew close. There was something between us, something real, something I hadn't felt in a long time. But I knew it couldn't go anywhere. I didn't have much time left. I couldn't do that to him. I couldn't drag him into my mess when I knew I wasn't going to be around much longer. Then one night we almost kissed. Almost. But I pulled away and ran, too scared to let it happen. After that, I stopped going to the practice room. It was better that way, safer for both of us. That same night, Calvin showed up at my door. He was soaked to the bone, standing outside in the pouring rain. He didn't move, didn't say a word. I didn't want to let him in. I didn't want to deal with him at all. But my sister said he'd been standing there for hours, and if I left him out there any longer, he might actually get sick. So, against my better judgment, I waved him inside. He hesitated for a moment, and then his face lit up with hope, like he couldn't believe I was actually letting him in. I felt a strange pang in my chest, a mix of anger and pity. He looked so much like the old me, standing there foolishly waiting, hoping for something that was never going to happen. I softened, almost out of habit, and handed him a towel. We sat in silence for a while, and then he finally spoke. "Selena, I messed up. I didn't know how to appreciate you. I took you for granted, and I'm sorry." He kept his head down, his voice thick with guilt. He looked like a man who had finally realized how much he had lost. The old me would have forgiven him right then and there. But I wasn't that person anymore. I crossed my arms and leaned back. "What about Anna? You don't want her anymore." At the sound of her name, he flinched. That told me everything I needed to know. He hadn't cut her off. Whatever lies he had spun before were just that, lies. "It's not like that," he said quickly, his voice shaky. "She just moved back here and doesn't know many people. She needed someone to help her get settled, and I was just doing that." I couldn't believe how blind I had been for so many years. How had I never seen him for what he truly was? I stood up and looked him straight in the eye. "You've been helping her a lot, haven't you? When I was home waiting for you, you were with her. When I lost our baby, you were with her. When I got sick, you were still with her. You've lied to me over and over, all to be with her. So tell me, Calvin, what am I to you?" He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "Sorry." That's all he had to offer after everything? After 10 years. Something inside me snapped. The anger I had been holding back for so long finally came rushing out. I slapped him. Hard. He didn't move, didn't react. He just sat there, stunned. "Get out," I said, my voice shaking with fury. "Get out of my life." Just then his phone rang. He hesitated, glancing at me, but before he could answer, I snatched it out of his hand. Anna's voice came through the speaker. "Hey, Calvin. How's it going with Selena? If we don't get her shares, we might not have enough votes for the board meeting." I hung up the phone, disgusted. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "It's not what you think," Calvin stammered, his face pale. "Selena, I swear it's not like that." But it didn't matter anymore. I finally saw him for who he truly was. At that moment, I realized something. This was the price I had paid for loving him. This was the cost of being blind. Chapter 9. I sat down, pouring myself a glass of water. "So that's it, Ethan. I wondered why you'd come to apologize. It was for those shares. Your father transferred them to me when we married. If you sign the divorce papers, I'll return the shares." Ethan's lips moved, looking embarrassed. "Those shares are important to me, Jenny. Then sign. I have extra copies of the divorce agreement. Can't we start over? You have only a few months left. Let me be with you. I can cook for you, take you to see the world. We still have a chance." He became emotional, tears streaming down his face. For the first time, he cried in front of me. Human joy and sorrow are different. To me, these were crocodile tears. I looked at Ethan like a stranger. I threw a divorce agreement and a pen at him. Sign it. Chapter 10. The next time I saw Ethan was at the company. I brought the share transfer agreement. Unsurprisingly, Anna was there. She greeted me. Jenny, long time no see. I walked past her. Her face turned awkward. I heard whispers around us. That Anna, a homewrecker, always seducing men and even hooked up with Ethan. What else would you expect? Did you hear Ethan is divorcing because of her? I ignored them, walking ahead. But I saw a familiar face in the boardroom. Chris. He looked surprised too, but only for a moment. He smiled at me. I smiled back. Ethan walked over. Mr. Chun, this is Jenny. She's here to transfer shares. With her shares, we can secure the vote. Chris looked at us with interest. He heard the gossip. So this is Ethan's wife? She's beautiful. And the one outside? He glanced at Anna. Ethan's face stiffened. We're divorced, I said. We have no relationship. Mr. Chun, please don't say such things. Chris came closer, boldly asking, in that case, can I pursue you? Ethan's face darkened, and everyone outside was stunned. I was shocked looking at Chris, but his eyes were sincere, not joking. I didn't know what to say, avoiding his gaze. Let's sign the share transfer agreement. We completed the signing in an awkward silence. Chris was the only one not awkward, his eyes following me. I left in a hurry, but I ran into Anna downstairs. She glared at me. I didn't know you were so good at seducing men, Jenny. I frowned, then laughed. I wouldn't dare. I'm just honest. Unlike you, lurking in the shadows. You. Anna was furious, raising her hand to hit me. I dodged, leaning against someone. It was Chris. Ethan came down, glaring at Anna. She reluctantly dropped her aggressive stance. Mr. Chun, no need to see me off. He looked at me, complex emotions in his eyes, but said nothing. Chris nodded, protectively guiding me to his car. Chapter 11. In the car. So, did you run away that night because of him? Chris watched Ethan's retreating figure, asking as we sat in the car. I shook my head. No, not him. He's not worth it. Chris leaned closer, very near. I instinctively recoiled, meeting his gaze. He was more charming than Ethan, with a touch of lazy indifference. He buckled my seatbelt but didn't move back, looking down at me. What I said earlier was true. Will you consider me? I heard my heartbeat quicken. But why? Why did I only have a few months left? I couldn't give him an answer. I turned away, not wanting him to see the tears in my eyes. He sighed, saying nothing more. We drove in silence. He dropped me off at home. Your piano playing is beautiful. I can see you love it. Come back to the piano room sometime. I have a gift for you. He left after saying that. Chapter 12. I stayed home listening to music. The next day I practiced piano in the air. On the third day I followed my heart and went out. But at the door I saw someone I didn't want to see. Ethan sat on the flower bed, looking like he'd been there a while. He saw me and came over, handing me a box of pastries. Jenny, these are your favorite osmanthus cakes. I queued for a long time to get them. Try them. He watched my face, his eyes hopeful, his expression cautious, unlike anything I'd ever seen. So much like the old me. I suppressed my sadness, calmly taking the pastries. I'll accept these. But Ethan, don't come to see me again. We're over. I turned to leave. He grabbed my arm. Why? Why are you so heartless now? Is it because of Chris? He was suddenly angry, gripping me tightly. I struggled, kicking him, shouting instinctively. Ethan, what's wrong with you? You cheated, ignored me for 10 years. What's the matter? Now that I've moved on, you want me back? Are you a masochist? Ethan suddenly cried. He sat on the ground, looking up at me, tears falling. I'm sorry, Jenny. I regret it. I really regret it. Please give me another chance. I looked down at him, this man I had loved for 10 years, now filled with regret. I reached out, helping him up, brushing off his clothes. My tone was calm. Ethan, loving you for 10 years has exhausted me. Every cold act, every hurt left a mark. There's no going back. I don't want you anymore. I smiled gently. Besides, my time is limited. I want to live for myself. Chapter 13. After sending Ethan away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. My words were for him and for myself. I thought of Chris and my piano dream. Why not give myself another chance? I wanted my dreams. Even if I burned out like a moth to a flame, it would be worth it. I wanted love. If I gave it my all, even if it lasted only 3 months, so what? Fate brought us together. I'd cherish it. When it ended, I wouldn't regret anything. Like the rain, it would eventually clear. I rushed to the piano room, finding a familiar figure. I ran to him, hugging him tightly. Chris seemed surprised by my boldness, but his eyes were full of joy. He had been waiting for me. I smiled at him, leaning in to kiss him. We both heard each other's heartbeats. Chris gave me a brand new piano just for me. As a child, I always wanted my own piano, but we couldn't afford it. Later, I had the money, but I gave up my piano dream for Ethan and never considered buying one. I never expected to have my own piano now. Chapter 14. I was ecstatic, dragging Chris and my sister to listen to me play day and night. In my last days, sharing my music with the people I loved was the happiest thing. But there were some hiccups. One night, a call woke me. It was Anna crying. She sounded drunk, rambling incoherently. "Ginny, why do you have everything? I knew Ethan first, but you married him. Now you're divorced and he still thinks about you, refusing to see me. Why? You have your sister, Ethan, and Chris. You have so much love. Why do I have nothing? Why are you so lucky? I'm not satisfied, I'm not satisfied." She cried, seemingly passing out, and the call ended. I didn't care about her words. I knew I wasn't lucky. I was just cherishing and loving what I had. I continued to spend my days happily with my sister and Chris. Sometimes I greedily wished it could last forever. But it didn't last long. My illness worsened. One day I started coughing blood, staining my piano. Chris and my sister looked at me in panic, their voices surrounding me. I wanted to comfort them, but I couldn't speak. By the time I reached the hospital, I had fallen into a coma. I only remembered my sister and Chris holding my hands, their warmth comforting me. It was the most gentle, warm feeling in the world. I thought in my haze, how wonderful to have this chance. Even if I died now, I had no regrets. I closed my eyes, falling into a long dream. Chris epilogue. From the moment I saw her, I was moved. The soft sunlight shining on her delicate, flying fingers. The music flowing from her fingertips was as captivating as she was. Ethan was truly blind, but luckily she was mine now. She must be an angel. So lovely, with dimples when she smiled. Always smelling of osmanthus cakes. I didn't want to see her cry. I knew she had little time left. Don't cry. It's okay. These scores, these melodies, these moments. I'll remember them forever. You'll always be with me in my memories. I won't be lonely. I'm honored to have caught your little tale in your final moments. Angel, I hope you'll come to me early in the next life. Don't make me wait too long.